What's up everyone, welcome to the channel. So today initially I had planned on getting up and coming out and washing the Hellcat. Unfortunately the weather here in Delaware is rather shitty today. So this is what I woke up today to. See the sky is completely overcast, although there really isn't any rain in the forecast, at least by the hourly forecast. But I don't know, if it doesn't dry up more than this, I probably won't be washing it. So in lieu of actually washing the car right now, I decided to kind of talk about some of the car washing products I've been using lately this summer. I am not a professional car wash, well, not a professional detailer I should say. So this is not meant to be any kind of professional opinion or professional review of these products. It's just my my personal take on them, from the perspective of I've been using them, and you know, I have some insight into at least my personal opinion about them. So what I'm going to talk about today are the couple of different wash mops. So this one here is the Griots Garage wash mop, and it comes with two mop heads, and I'll show these more to you in a little bit. But it comes with one of these orange ones and then a green one, and this one here, this one here with the blue head, that is actually Microfiber Madness. I think it's called the Incredi Pad or Incredi Mop or something like that. So we're going to talk about those two things in comparison to each other. Alright, so the first thing I want to compare between the two is the length of the handles in their completely compressed state. So I haven't actually measured these, so I'm not going to talk about what the actual lengths are. But you can see, you know, the Griots Garage is probably twice as long when you look at the length of the mop head on top of the actual handle itself as the Microfiber Madness mop in their completely compressed state. So while that makes it easier to store the Microfiber Madness handle, it does mean that anytime you use it, you're pretty much going to have to extend it practically to its full length. So you know, one pro and one con as it relates to the Microfiber Madness mop. But you can see overall the Griots, even in its compressed state, is actually pretty decent from the point of view of being able to reach across the car. You do still have to, you know, extend it if you want to reach all the way across the car from one side. But it definitely has a much better working distance in its compressed state. Alright, so these are the two different mops in their fully extended state. You can see that the Griots Garage is definitely considerably longer than the Microfiber Madness. Using my height as a guide, I would say that the Microfiber Madness is probably about maybe 4 foot tall, you know, when it's fully extended. Again, if you go to the websites to you know, look at these products, I believe the actual lengths are listed on the product, so you know, this is just an estimation. Again, you know, I am 5'8", and this thing is, the Griots Garage is definitely taller than me. So in the grand scheme of things, I would say the Griots is probably at least 6 foot long, maybe 6.5 foot long. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the how the handles work for extending them and compressing the handles and stuff. The Griots handle is pretty much the same kind of assembly you would see on any kind of painting stick. So basically this is threaded, you twist it, it loosens the rod, and then the you know, it pulls out that way, and then you re-crank it to tighten it down. The Microfiber Madness is a little bit different. It uses these, I don't know, kind of tensioners. So what you do is you basically, doing this one-handed, a pain in the ass. Oh, hold on a second, let me do it from this angle. So you flip up on that, and then you know, that basically allows that section of, you know, rod to move in and out. I don't know why, but for some reason the Microfiber Madness mop actually has two of these. So instead of you know, having one connection like the Griots does, has two. I'm assuming that's so they can do two individual sections, and I think that's how they get it to compress so small in its compressed state, but still be able to get it out to about 4 foot long in its fully extended state. I have a tendency to like the way these work better than these twist kind. The only problem is you can see, you know, from the size difference, you know, this thing is only marginally larger than the actual pole itself. So it's, you know, not really generally a hazard to hit the car. You can see that this thing here almost doubles the width of the handle. So depending on how you're using this, if these things are facing down towards the surface of the paint, you know, if you're not paying attention, you can seriously run the risk of these things hitting whatever it is that you're washing at the time. Okay, so now I'm going to go over the connection of the mop head to the pole. And yes, I know how all this sounds, but unfortunately, you know, that's the terminology. So with the Griots, this is a threaded assembly, and the actual mop head itself is completely threaded as well. Let's see if I can get this taken off. So this is what the mop head looks like. So like I said, if you, I don't know if you can see it in the side there, probably not, but you can see the head of the pole is the head of the pole. You can see the top of the handle is you know, threaded. So what ends up happening is you put this on and thread it, and then this thing here actually threads down or threads up. I forget which direction it goes. I think it goes down, and it actually works as kind of a locking collar to keep it from spinning around on the handle, you know, while you're using it. So the Microfiber Madness mop, the mop head and the handle connect a little bit differently. As you can see, the top of the handle is not threaded like the Griots Garage one is. However, the sleeve on the Microfiber Madness one is threaded. So you slide this over, you know, the top of the handle. You then spin this backwards, and it causes the collar to pretty much lock down on top of the handle. And what they've done is, I mean, if you really tug on this thing, again, the terminology, if you really, you know, try to disconnect this while it's on, even with the collar tightened up, it will come off. So what they've done is they've included this little plastic, kind of like a cotter pin type of thing. And you can see you got the, you know, the hole here in the top of the handle, and then you got the matching hole in the mop head. And so once you put this on, you lock it in place with this, and then you tighten this down, and I guess this thing being in there ensures that you can't still pull this this piece off, even with the threads being locked in place. So it's an added, I guess, measure of keeping the thing together. However, if you lose this thing, I don't know if you can purchase these things by themselves. I'm assuming you probably can't. Unlike the well, the Griots Garage, you got to buy the whole thing together, but you can buy the different you know, mop heads for it. Again, with this, I don't think you can buy just this piece itself, you know, the actual mop head. So, you know, if you lose this thing, you're probably going to have to fashion some kind of pin, or maybe even finding a cotter pin or something like that that would fit to hold that in place. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about specifically the Griots Garage mop head. As far as I'm concerned, this is the single weakest point of the entire product. The handle itself is great. How the handle connects to the mop head is great. I mean, you can pretty much buy and use, I believe, almost any standard painting extension handle and have it work with this mop head. Unlike the Microfiber Madness, that's not going to happen. But with the Griots, you know, if you wanted to, you could do that. If that handle breaks, I believe you could, like I said, use something and that would be beneficial there. But this mop head is horrible in its design. These pieces of Velcro were not on there. I've made several attempts to modify this thing to make it one, easier to use, and two, safer to use. If you look at this thing, it is literally just a piece of hard plastic. There is nothing on here from the perspective of padding, and this is the actual, you know, the microfiber mop that you put on it. And while the inside is slightly padded, I can tell you from experience, when this, if you put this thing directly on this thing, you will feel these plastic edges at the edge of this microfiber mop. And if you hit your car with that, you are going to hit the car with the hard edge of that plastic. Now, whether it'll damage the car or not, I don't know. I've not tried it. I'm certainly not going to try it. I've not had it happen to me because I've not used this thing without some kind of padding on it to kind of mitigate that. And while we're speaking about padding, I've gone through numerous attempts to try to find the perfect type of padding to use for this. I've tried this. Initially, I tried one piece of this and believe this is 1/4 inch thick. That proved to be too thin, so then I added another piece on top of it to make it thicker. And as you can see, it's got the you know, the Velcro on there to hold it on there. And while this generally works, what I have found is even though this is a very high density foam and it's not supposed to absorb water, it does absorb a tiny bit of water, and then you end up having to take it off the mop head and you have to, you know, wring it out and all that other stuff. The other thing that I've noticed with any of these pads, actually, here was another attempt. I bought a nice thick pad, cut a slit in it, and, you know, tried to put it over the end pieces. That made it too thick to even get the mop head on it correctly. So what I found to actually be the best, but they're also the most challenging, is I found these pieces of 90-degree insulation for just general plumbing. And what I did was, like I said, they were full 90 degrees, so, you know, pretty much like that. So I had to cut off part of it to make it fit. But basically what I do is I put these on the 4 corners, and then I have to slip over the microfiber mop head, or the mitt part, onto the head to use it. And again, this is another one of those things where I think is the one of the major drawbacks of this thing is how the microfiber piece actually goes on it. So I'm not going to pull these apart because they're a pain in the ass to put back together. And you can see they actually connect, or they stick to the inside. But this is a Velcro pull tab. So it's Velcro here, and then the connecting Velcro, you can see, is actually down here on this piece. So you have to pull this back, flay that open like that, pull it over the mop head, and when you got these big ass things on the end, it makes it very difficult to do that, and you can only have 2 of them on at a time. So you put one side on, and then you have to basically put the other pieces on, and then do the same thing with this, peel it back, pull it over, and then, you know, shut it. Same thing with this. If this is on the mop head, you know, you got to kind of pull this, you know, open this thing up, pull it on, then this starts to curl up around the edges. It's just really cumbersome to get that thing on. You know, if you don't have any padding on the mop head, it's a little bit better. You know, then you're just ripping this open, sliding it over, and then going about your business. But even just that, you know, pulling this thing open, then once you put it on, you gotta, you know, you gotta pull these 2 pieces back together, and then you gotta lay that down. It's just a real pain in the ass. So out of the microfiber, the Griots Garage mop, the mop head itself is the actual weakest part of the whole thing, at least in my opinion. All right, so now for the Microfiber Madness Incredi Mop. You can see right off the bat, you know, they've thought about the fact that, you know, the mop head itself is hard plastic. So they've included, you know, a piece of, it's not extremely soft, but it does provide padding, you know, around the edges of this thing. So if you do, you know, kind of bump the car, you know, there is a little bit of padding within the mop head itself. The fact that this is, you know, really open cell foam, at least I believe that that's what this is, you know, it does stick to the mop head with Velcro already included, because like I said, this comes on the mop head already. But because it is such large open cell, you know, while it does have some water in it, it's very easy to just rinse it out and wring it out and done. Where I think this thing shines the most is in the design of the actual piece that goes on the mop head. So this is the Microfiber Madness. It's the same material that they use for the Incredi pads. You know, I've seen other people online talk about how, you know, deep this is. You know, I'm pretty sure that's by design, so that if it picks up dirt, you know, it goes down in pretty far, and as long as you're not like really putting a lot of pressure on this thing, you know, it shouldn't hopefully scratch the paint. But, you know, rinsing this thing out as it's being used, you know, I use a power washer to rinse it out, and I've never had an issue with this doing any damage to the paint, at least not that I've actually noticed. But what's nice about this is you can see that this thing is all the way open, and it's designed that this, you know, just basically slides up over the mop head from, you know, this side. And then if I can turn this over, you can see there's one strip of Velcro on here. So basically this comes on, and then this piece just folds up and over and attaches to this Velcro strip right here. So this is way easier to get on to this thing than that Griots garage thing is, you know, having to do it from two sides and all that other stuff. So this, to me, is a much better design on how to get this thing onto this and have it attach and make it fairly easy to do. So between these two products, I mean, if I had my choice, it would be the Microfiber Madness mop head and mop on the Griots garage handle. You know, like I said, I do kind of like the way these work, but the fact that there's two of them, the fact that they add so much thickness to the handle means to me you got to be very careful when you're using it. This thing being so small, you know, unless you have it fully extended, you don't get a lot of reach. So if you're doing something large like a truck or an SUV, you're definitely not going to be able to reach all the way across the vehicle with this thing. You're still going to have to go, you know, both sides of the vehicle. You know, the Griots garage is definitely better from the perspective of the handle, how the handle functions, how it connects to the mop head. The other nice thing is, you know, they have this little piece of foam padding here, so it gives you a place up to put your second hand and, you know, have a good place to grip. You know, this thing here, you can grip one of these if you want, but, you know, your hand is on this, and if your hands are, you know, wet and soapy and stuff like that, you know, you have a potential for your hand to slide. The other thing that I noticed is the Griots garage mop head has a lot of weight to it. So when you have that thing on that and it's filled with water and soap, especially if you add in, I put the foam back at the other side of the garage, especially if you add in the foam, there's a lot of weight to the Griots garage. So in one aspect that's good, because, you know, while you're working on the car, you can feel where the mop head is, and you can, you know, you don't have to put a whole lot of weight behind it because the mop head itself already has some weight, so it makes it easier for, you know, kind of cleaning the car. This thing is very light, and then when you add it to the shorter pole and the, you know, this I think is actually maybe a little bit lighter than the Griots one. This, the Microfiber Madness, is extremely light when you're using it in the car, on the car. So basically, you know, you have to be a little bit more cognizant of what you're doing, because you know, if you go to, you know, move the mop too quick, you could actually fling the mop out of your hand because it's so light. You know, light is good in some aspects, because, you know, when you're working around the car, you don't have the heavy weight of the pole, you know, slowly, you know, wearing you down. But at the same time, it does mean, you know, if your car is a little bit dirty, you're going to have to put a little bit more effort into the cleaning process from the perspective of, you know, you don't have the weight of the mop itself helping you, you know, with that. So those are my thoughts on the two, you know, the Griots garage microfiber mop, and then the Microfiber Madness Incredi Mop.